Once we ask the right questions, the answers are often simple. And that's why I want to tell this one last story. Story of one of my favorite people in the world. Her name's Jane Chen. Now, several years ago, she quit her job. She was on this high-powered career track. She quit her job to work on a problem that she learned about, which is that there's 20 million babies every year that are born around the world premature or preterm. And the way she described it is she said she felt like she'd won the genetic lottery because she was not born preterm. She was born healthy and on time. And a lot of these babies are born in parts of the world with poor nutrition, poor education, poor access to healthcare, like Pakistan and Western China. And there's an even more upsetting part of this problem of all these babies being born too early, and it's that we have a solution. We have the incubator, this marvelous piece of technology that saves babies' lives if they're born too early. The problem is these things cost $20,000 to $40,000. They're in every modern hospital, but they're not in some poor village in Pakistan. So what Jane and this team that she built embarked on was a mission to make this baby incubator 100 times cheaper so they could serve these villages in these poor parts of the world with poor nutrition, poor healthcare access. So they did what most of us do when we're trying to solve a problem like this. They looked at all the components and they said, how do we make them more efficient? Took this very linear, structured management consultancy approach. We looked at all the components. They said, how do we make this more efficient? How do we source these parts? How do we design the thing so that it works better? They said, we basically tried to make a cheaper glass box. And with this approach, they thought they could basically cut the cost in half. They could make it 2 times cheaper, but no way they could make it 100 times cheaper. So this forced them to back up and say, well, there's no way to solve this problem. Can we look at what the problem is? Can we make some observations? What is happening when these babies are born premature? And the question after that became, what does a preterm baby need to be healthy? And it turns out that in most cases where a baby's life can be saved by an incubator, the thing that it needs in order to be healthy is heat. There's all these other components to the incubator that do all of these things, but it's something like 90% of cases, if the baby stays the right temperature that it would have stayed if it had stayed inside of the womb, it'll survive. So then they said, well, based on that, the question is not how do we make a 100 times cheaper incubator, it's how do we keep a baby warm? And when you ask that question, the answer ends up being kind of obvious. They invented this sleeping bag for babies called the embrace warmer. You put a little heating pad in it. It's kind of like a toaster meets a sleeping bag. It keeps babies the exact right temperature that they need to be. And it's so simple that you don't need to know how to read in order to operate it. So they could deploy these in all of these villages all around the world. And where, cost $20,000 to spin up an incubator in a hospital, they could sell these embrace warmers for $200, and they made enough profit that they could use the profits to give away more of them. And so they made deals with all of these countries, all of these nonprofits, to buy and distribute the embrace warmer. And I love this story because the answer did not come from working harder. It came from being forced to ask a wiser question. And years have gone by. They've done amazing work, and they've saved hundreds of thousands of babies' lives. Their goal is to save millions of babies. And I love this story. I've always loved this story. I've known Jane for a long time. But it really hit home when I had my first child, who was born 6 weeks early. So this is him. This is Quentin in the NICU after he was born 6 weeks early. And I saw firsthand how these amazing doctors, this amazing technology, these people went to work and saved my baby's life. And I can't actually look at the screen because when I see this, because it's so powerful. It's so important, the work we can do. And the fact that there's babies around the world whose lives have been saved, like mine, because of this innovation, because of the willingness to take the time to ask this better question, is truly remarkable. And so Quentin's fine now. You can see this is him. He's adorable. He's busy doing other things. He doesn't care about any of the stuff we're talking about. Here he is dipping his hand into some barbecue sauce. But when I think about the world that this kid is going to grow up in, the world that he has no idea what the possibilities are, when I think about that and I think about the work that I want you to do to make this world a world that he deserves, that his peers, that these other kids growing up deserve to be in, we got to ask the question, do we value humanity enough to pay the cost? Do we value humanity enough to take the time to make wise decisions.